Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I am Bryson Carver. We have got a great show for y'all tonight. Obviously going to lead it off with Deshaun Watson. The news actually broke as I was recording the show yesterday, so you guys kind of saw my live reaction. I'll give, I guess, more of a detailed reaction now we've gotten some more information in over the last 24-plus hours. I'll leave the show with that. Talk about the Brooklyn Nets. According to the great Brian Windhorst, who's, really rising in the NBA game amongst NBA insiders, he believes, and he's been pretty spot on about a lot of these reports, especially regarding KD and the Nets. Looks like the Nets are going to run it back. It's going to be KD, Kyrie, whatever Ben Simmons gives, and everybody else in for one more run, one last dance, if you will, for the Brooklyn Nets this season. I'll discuss that, what it means for them, and whether or not they can contend for the 2023 NBA championship. Also, Dak Prescott, Stephen Jones, Jerry's son, one of the higher-ups, one of the executives with the Dallas Cowboys, believes that Dak's going to have a big year based on one big thing that he is doing right now during training camp. I'll discuss that, as well as why Jim Irsay, well, not a huge fan of him coming out, bashing Carson Wentz, even though I'm not a big Wentz fan. I do believe Jim Irsay is correct in that the Colts have an upgrade at the quarterback position in Matt Ryan. And at the end of the show, Shaquille O'Neal really, really, really agrees with a basketball opinion that is not popular, but it is one that myself and the Big Diesel apparently share. And I was very happy to see that. I'll discuss that at the end of the show. But first, let's start on a serious note. Deshaun Watson, we got the news yesterday. The NFL and the NFL Players Association have come to agreement. It will be an 11-game suspension for Deshaun Watson. It got essentially doubled from 6. It will be a $5 million fine, which is pretty unprecedented for what I know. I mean, a lot of times owners will get $1-2 million fine. So for a player, not a billionaire, obviously, to get a $5 million fine is a big deal, big statement, by the NFL. And this all stems back, of course, from, again, when the NFL Players Association came to an agreement in the CBA, right? They said that anytime a player violated the NFL's personal conduct policy, a third party would come in, usually, a retired judge, would come in, make their ruling, and that would be that. The NFL could challenge, but the whole essence of doing that was, let's get somebody who knows the legal system inside and out to make this decision, because Roger Goodell, I believe, is the only commissioner who does not have a law degree. So that's part of the reason that they did this. So Judge Sue Robinson, and she will be, a factor in this segment because I think, something that she points out is important. She comes out, okay, we're giving Deshaun Watson 6 games. And we all were like, oh, gosh, that feels a little light. I mean, given the allegations, given the how graphic these allegations were, 6 games. Given the reports from the New York Times as well, talking about Deshaun Watson's reaching out to, 66 different women over a 17-month span, that the Texans basically assisted him in doing so. It's like, this is weird. And so the NFL pushes back. The NFL, Roger Goodell, appeals the suspension. And Roger Goodell, as recently as a week ago, called Deshaun Watson's activity, quote, predatory behavior. So Roger Goodell and multiple reports coming out of the NFL said they want to drop the hammer. They want the season. And so the NFLPA comes back. The report comes out a few days ago that Deshaun Watson's team would be happy with an 8-game suspension. The Players Association and the NFL come together. They agree on an 11-game suspension for Deshaun Watson, again, with a $5 million fine. Here's what this means. First of all, as I've said throughout this entire offseason, as we've continued to get more and more information on this topic, I've said, if I'm commissioner, I have the ultimate power. I'm giving him the season. You cannot have this dark cloud being Deshaun Watson and being his legal situation hanging over the NFL season, especially a season that's got so many great stories coming in. I mean, you got Tom Brady. This is probably his last year. You got Russell Wilson in Denver. You've got, obviously, Joe Burrow. Can he lead the Bengals back to the Super Bowl? Can the Rams be the first team to go back-to-back in 20 years? A lot of big stories. What do the Cowboys do? You don't want this overshadowing that, because the NFL knows. They've dealt with numerous controversies. They've gotten through basically all of them. I'm reading a book about it right now. It's an excellent book by Mike Florio called Playmakers. Check it out. But the NFL does not want this hanging over the season. And so Deshaun Watson, ironically, will be coming back. His first game will be against the Houston Texans. But here's the thing I wanted to hit on the most, okay? First of all, on the Cleveland Browns part. Okay, so again, during the show yesterday when I was pre-recording it, the news came out, okay, Deshaun's getting 11 games. And about 20, 25 minutes later, I get an alert from my phone from Adam Schefter, lead NFL insider for ESPN, showing that the Browns have put out a statement and Deshaun Watson has put out a statement. She's like, okay. And I read the statements. Deshaun Watson said in his statement, and I quote, let's see if I can pull this up. Yep. He said, quote, "I apologize once again for any pain the situation has caused. I take accountability for for the decisions I made." Okay, so appears to, at least for the second time in the last week, because he did apologize via a Browns reporter before his preseason debut last week. Okay, so this is like the second time he's shown a little bit of remorse. It's like, okay, this maybe you're starting to, go in the right direction with this. Maybe this can work possibly for the season. And then the Browns do Browns things, and that is make horrendous decisions from a football perspective, from a business perspective, from a PR perspective. The day the suspension is finalized, they send Deshaun Watson to the mic, even after he's put out a statement. They don't wait a few days and have him talk to the PR team, this and that. They send him right to the mic as the news is hot off the press, right? And Deshaun Watson goes contrary to just about every single thing that he said in his statement, including saying, quote, "I've always stood on my innocence and always said I've never assaulted anyone or disrespected anyone. I'm going to continue to stand on my innocence." So it's either he is going to, hold himself accountable for bad decisions, or he's standing on his innocence. Which is it? He's sorry for the women he impacted, but he never did anything. Add to it that, going back to Judge Sue Robinson, she said Deshaun didn't seem to have any type of remorse for anything that happened. And she even said from what she found in her investigation, Deshaun's actions met the criteria of sexual assault. She just said it wasn't violent. Now, we can debate all day from a legal perspective, from a moral perspective, what's violent, even from, the definition of the word violent. We can debate that all day and all night, all we want. But that is what she ruled, that she believes through what she's found, Deshaun Watson did what these 30 women have accused him of doing. But again, and I've said this the whole time, ever since Deshaun Watson did this said action that I'm about to bring up, he keeps, I'm standing on my innocence, I'm standing on my innocence. Okay, fine. Then why did you settle with all but one of the women? Matter of fact, the only woman who did not settle with Deshaun wrote an op-ed, I think in the Daily Beast, explaining why she won't settle with him. Okay? But he settled with the majority of the women. Thought you're innocent. Me? I'm not settling with anybody if I didn't do anything. So you have that. The Texans, who again, according to the New York Times, assisted Deshaun in contacting these 66 women, they settled with, I think, either half or the majority of those women. Add to it, I read this a month ago, the Browns are not going to allow Deshaun Watson to contact a massage therapist outside of the Browns organization. So even the Browns don't believe him. You know how I know that? Well, another example, the NFL in their statement about this ruling, this agreement between the Players Association and the league, they came out and said the league and the Browns organization is going to donate $17 million to organizations that are fighting to prevent sexual misconduct and assault. So you have the Browns chipping in with the NFL to donate this money to these worthy causes that their quarterback continues to say he didn't do, and the organization basically goes right along with him. But the organization also says, yeah, we don't trust you to contact a massage therapist outside of our organization. We don't trust you. So this is just another example. Even by Cleveland Browns standards, this is pathetic. This is pathetic. While the news is hot, while everybody's talking about it, that's when you send Deshaun Watson the mic. Of all the times, you send him right after the news comes out just to get it out of the way. No. As Draymond Green always says in his podcast, stand on that. You gave him the highest guaranteed contract in NFL history. He's going to be the highest paid quarterback per annual salary in football to Aaron Rodgers. Stand on that. Right? Don't rush into the podium. Give it time. Give it time to bake. Then send them while, sort of everybody, emotions and everything's kind of calmed down. Then send them the mic. Not when everybody's like, my God, he's actually going to play this season. Not when everybody's mad about it. This just shows the complete lack of self-awareness by the Browns yet again. And by Deshaun Watson yet again. Again, back to his statement that he released before his press conference. I apologize once again for any pain the situation has caused. I take accountability for the decision I made. Accountability, apologize, key words there. He comes out. I've always stood on my innocence and always said I've never assaulted anyone or disrespected anyone. I'm going to continue to stand on my innocence. So which is it? One or the other. Also appears he lied under oath to Judge Robinson. So this is just a you-know-what show all the way around by the Browns. Of course, should we be shocked? It's the Haslam family, for crying out loud. And Deshaun Watson. It's a clown show. And so just the fact, it's like I saw a tweet yesterday. They said it's like Deshaun Watson took a masterclass in what not to say when this news breaks. It's like, geez. Listen, I'm somebody who believes, I'm not a fan of, like cancel culture. I think there's a fine line in what's cancel culture and what's not. There's accountability and there's cancel culture. I think there's a fine line between the two. I'm not for cancel culture. I believe in second chances. Okay? And so when you hear the last week, and look, it's coming from my perspective. I'm a guy. I can't feel this the same way that a woman can. That's why I said that's another reason I said suspend Deshaun this season, because it's not going to send the greatest message to women who make up half, the fans in the NFL, about 50% of NFL fans. That, oh yeah, this guy allegedly did what he did. There's a whole lot of evidence to back up that he probably ended up doing what they are alleging that he's doing or did, and now he's on the field playing for the greatest league in the world, for the king of television, the National Football League. It's not the greatest message to send the women. I think that's another reason why Goodell, wanted to basically drop the hammer on him, especially in the court of public opinion. And that matters. The NFL very much cares about that court just as much as our legal system as it is. I believe in second chances. But when you continue to screw up with statements that you're making, with looks like you lied to a judge, the Browns don't trust you, the league doesn't trust you, the independent judge doesn't trust you. And also part of the suspension, and this is something no one's really talked about this today, but I think it is very, very important. Because during the time of the suspension, 11 games, which will go into early December. I think the suspension, they said, starts August 30th and will go into up until the week that the Browns take on the Texans. That's when Deshaun can come back. In that time, Deshaun Watson has to go to counseling. The NFL said you got to go to counseling. And if he doesn't, quote unquote, pass the test of counseling, if he doesn't show any signs of contrition or anything of that nature, he cannot be reinstated. So I think that's something else to pay attention to. So this guy just keeps digging a deeper and deeper and deeper hole for himself. And so do the Browns. But if there's any organization in the NFL that would do this, are we shocked that it's this one? It's an absolute disaster. Absolute positive disaster for the Browns, for Deshaun Watson, for the Haslam family. It's a clown show. Absolute clown show. And like I said, can't say I'm shocked. This is what they do. It's Cleveland, for crying out loud. And a lot of people were discussing too, like, why an odd number of games? Like, especially if it's double-digit games, you almost wonder, okay, you're going to do an even number of games, 10, 12. Like, why was it in between 11? And a lot of people believe, a lot of reporters close to the NFL were like, if it was 10, he would have come back to play Tampa. And given that the great Tom Brady is the face of the league, is everything the NFL wants its players to be. Great teammate, great leader, wins championships, works his butt off, wants to, is fiery, passionate, everything the league wants its players to be. They don't want him sharing the same field as the biggest problem the league has had in decades. They don't want anything to do with that. So that's why a lot of folks believe it was 11. And some out there believe, close to Roger Goodell, saying that, hey, Goodell just doesn't want the Browns in the playoffs. They do not want Deshaun Watson in the playoffs with a chance to go win a championship, especially a year after this happens. Man, that would be a disaster for the NFL and for its branded for, it would not be good. So it's the Browns, Deshaun Watson. Why are we shocked? All right, moving on to the NBA, to the Brooklyn Nets, who, according to Brian Windhorst, looks like they're going to run it back. Looks like KD's not going anywhere. We've known for about a month now Kyrie's not going anywhere. The Lakers are the only team interested. They weren't willing to give up 2 first-round picks, so Kyrie's going to stay put in Brooklyn. He, of course, opted into the last year of his max deal with the Nets. He'll be a free agent next summer, and my belief is, the belief by a lot of insiders, he'll probably end up a Laker next season. But Brian Windhorst, who's been very close to this whole situation, said, quote, right now, I think the Nets want to run this team back, and they're hoping Kevin Durant agrees. The way they're conducting trade talks and the prices they are asking has teams out there thinking they don't really want to trade Kevin Durant anyway. They want to bring this team back. We'll see if Kevin Durant goes along with that in training camp. That's what I think the team wants. I think the team wants the results on the court that will make everybody feel a little bit better. But I just can't get a good feel on where Kevin Durant is. He has been asked to be traded and told no so far, at least. He has asked for the coach to be fired. He has asked for the general manager to be fired. He keeps getting told no. Does he take all those no's and still show up to training camp? That's something I think we'll have to that's something that I think we'll have to wait and watch. First of all, the question, I think, is whether KD finishes the season with the Nets. I would be really, really surprised if a team makes a deal before the NBA season starts. But obviously, I don't know Kevin Durant personally, but following this guy since he was in Oklahoma City, especially, through what teammates have said, coaches have said, there probably isn't anybody, if there is, you can count them on one hand. There probably isn't anybody in basketball that just loves just the pure game of basketball. KD, as he says himself, he just loves to hoop. He loves basketball. You can't get him away from a court. He is always hooping every single day. He just loves the game. Loves the game. So KD's not the type of dude like a James Harden that would just hold out. He's not that. He's going to play basketball. Now, I think the question after that is, will his heart be in it? Is part of the reason he wants out of Brooklyn frustrations with Kyrie? I do think some of it has to do with Ben Simmons. There was a story that came out a few weeks ago talking about how Ben Simmons pretty much ignored his teammates in a group chat when they asked him if he was going to come back and play Game 4 of that series against Boston. I can get from KD's perspective and every other Nets player's perspective, that would be frustrating. I get that. Kyrie Irving, get that too. But then again, it was KD's decision to go play with Kyrie Irving. But again, that's another story for another day. We've discussed that at length on this show. But what does it mean for Brooklyn? Well, it means Brooklyn is at least viable in the East. Okay? If you've got KD healthy, you've got Kyrie Irving healthy and focused, who knows what you get from Ben Simmons? You've made some additions in the offseason. You added Royce O'Neal. Patty Mills is coming back. Seth Curry's back. Joe Harris is back from injury. A lot of shooters. Again, they're still not going to be very good defensively. Steve Nash isn't going anywhere, and he has been, and I love Steve Nash as a player, as a guy. He has been a horrendous head coach in the NBA. But again, that was also KD and Kyrie's decision. But if you look at the Eastern Conference, which I don't believe is as good as the West going in, I said all of last season, at least the second half of last season, I thought the East was better than the West. I thought the East had more contenders than the West. This season, I think it's flipped. The West has probably five, maybe 6 teams that we could see, maybe not winning the championship, but if things break right for them, we could see them in the finals. Obviously, my Golden State Warriors, I almost said the Lakers, the Clippers, the Grizzlies, the Suns, the Nuggets, and we can add 6 team, Dallas. Dallas did just get to the Western Conference Finals. All 6 teams, if you told me one of those 6 will be in the finals, I'm like, yeah, I could see that. Some of those obviously wouldn't be shocked at all. Golden State, Clippers, but some of those, if Phoenix got in, we were like, yeah, they got there a couple of years ago. East is different. Miami still has holes. Okay, it took Jimmy Butler playing the best basketball he's ever played in his life just to get Miami to a Game 7 against a better Boston Celtics team, and a Boston Celtics team that I think, if you don't want to say they had a better coach than Miami, and I love Eric Spoelstra, equal footing, it's a wash, right? Eric Spoelstra and Ime Udoka of the Celtics, okay? But Milwaukee, to me, is the favorite to come out of the East, because you added Joe Ingles, you added other pieces in the offseason, and you get Chris Middleton coming back healthy with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who, has won 2 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, and a Finals MVP just in the last 4 years. Okay, so he'll be back. He'll come out with a vengeance. Right, you still have Drew Holiday, who to me is the best defensive guard in basketball. I would take him over Marcus Smart because of his length, quickness, his incredible anticipation. He's stronger than Marcus Smart. And I think he can guard more wings than Marcus Smart can, just because, again, size, length. So Milwaukee's no joke. Milwaukee's absolute contender. Boston's a contender. You added Malcolm Brogdon, right? You added Danilo Gallinari to a team that just made the NBA Finals, and we lauded them for their depth, for their youth, right? So they got better. They added more pieces that can help them go win a championship. So Boston, Milwaukee, I think, to me, are the clear-cut 2 best teams in the East. Miami, again, that's another team. If you told me they're in the finals next year, I wouldn't be stunned. Okay, I've always said, I've said since the Heat season came to an end in that Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Pat Riley, the evil genius, he's got a plan up his sleeve. He's going to make something happen. I thought it'd be this offseason. It may have to come this upcoming season, but he's got a plan up his sleeve. We'll see what happens with that. But Miami is viable, no question about it. Okay, Philadelphia, I've seen James Harden. Just saw James Harden is taking great care of his body in the offseason. Is a little too late? Maybe. But I think I've said all offseason about James Harden, and I've been critical of him year after year on this show, but I respect about James Harden is it looks like he is coming to the realization of what he is as an NBA player. I can be the best or the second best player on a championship team. Can't be the best anymore. Okay, the days of winning MVPs and scoring titles, those have passed. But I can still make an all-star game. Okay, I can still lead the league in assists. I can still be this team's primary decision maker. And maybe, does he commit to defense? Does he not completely shun and abandon the mid-range shot? If those 2 questions, to me, at this point, if those 2 questions are answered with, with a yes for Harden and the Sixers, okay, the Sixers are a contender. Right? Remember, they added PJ Tucker. Everywhere PJ Tucker goes, the team gets better. Remember, PJ Tucker was teammates with James Harden back in Houston. You look down the list, I'm not high on Chicago or Atlanta. But again, the East, in terms of contenders, is not better than the West. So where does Brooklyn fit in all this? If Kyrie, KD give you 55 games, 60 games together, they stay fairly healthy throughout the year. Maybe they have some injuries here or there. Maybe Kyrie has something to attend to. Who knows what it's going to be this year. Those 2 together, you can be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. You can. Just remember, a couple years ago, they were the number 2 seed. But the problem that I have with the Nets is, again, coaching, very limited. They're not horribly deep, especially defensively. They don't have guys that can go out there and get you consistent stops that can lock up your best player. Right? KD is still a very, very good defender. I don't think he's elite anymore. I think he's more valuable for being more of a shot blocker, more of an interior guy. Right? Remember, I always say a few years ago, he was top 5 in the league in blocks. So I think he can still be that. Kyrie is not a good defender. Simmons is, but he is a massive liability in the offensive end. You have to take him out of the game late in games because they're just going to keep fouling him and send him to the free throw line. And he has some major, major demons at the stripe. So you have to take him off the floor the last 2 minutes of the basketball game, or even maybe in the last 5 minutes of a close game. They don't have a ton of size. So this is a Nets team that's going to get by on the greatness of Kevin Durant and the greatness of Kyrie Irving. Because you don't know, as unpredictable as Kyrie is, Ben Simmons is right in that ballpark, and Kyrie's better than Simmons. So what do you get from those 2? Can KD stay healthy? Just remember, the last few years, he's had some trouble staying healthy. We all remember he had I always say, calf injury. I say that for the podcast audience. I'm saying that in quotes, against Houston in the second round of the 2019 playoffs that turned into ruptured Achilles in the NBA Finals against Toronto. Of course, he missed that entire next season recovering from the Achilles. He comes back the next year. He has some MCL issues. I think he had a thigh issue. And then last year, he has more injuries, more lower extremity type injuries, more calf problems. So can Kevin stay healthy? So that's, I always say about contenders, or whether if you got a talented team, if you got a team you're like, okay, maybe they can make a championship run. I always say, if you got more questions than answers, I'm out. If you got more, I don't know, maybe if, those type of words, I can't consider you a championship contender. I know what Golden State is. I know what Boston is. I know what Milwaukee is, what Memphis is, what Phoenix is, right? What the Clippers are. What, again, Philadelphia is another team sort of on the bubble, right? Are they deep enough? Do you trust Doc Rivers in the playoffs? Do you trust James Harden in the playoffs? Can Joel Embiid stay healthy for a full season? Question. Right now, I can't put Philly there. To me, Philly and Brooklyn are kind of on the same level, just for different reasons. But the toast of the East is Milwaukee and Boston. Does anybody show up for the party to challenge those two? Very possible. Very possible. I'm just not sure if it's going to be Brooklyn. I feel like the ceiling for this team, as talented as they are, as great as Kevin Durant is, a first-round win. That's where I feel like it ends. Because we know about the playoffs, it's about depth and adjustments and execution down the stretch. That's where, going back to Golden State, that's where Golden State excels in all three. Very deep, halftime adjustments. I've always said, I don't think Steve Kerr gets enough credit for how phenomenal he is in regards to halftime adjustments. That's why the Golden State Warriors over the past, half decade plus have been the best third quarter team in the NBA by a country mile. Halftime adjustments by their head coach, Steve Kerr, and by their veteran players to a certain degree. And late in games. Does anybody execute late in games better than Golden State? That's why they've won 4 championships in the last 8 years. Right? That's what hurt Boston once they met Golden State in the finals. They were very bad executing down the stretch. Adjustments were fine on the part of Ime Udoka, and we know the Celtics were relatively deep. But if you check off all 3 boxes, you're a team to be reckoned with. You are a team that can absolutely go all the way and win the championship. That's why I love the Clippers, right? Because last year's playoffs and even this season, late in games, tremendous execution, right? Kind of getting over the hump of that 3-1 choke against Denver. Okay, halftime adjustments, Ty Lue, exceptional in that department. Okay, and are the Clippers deep? They're very deep. So they check off all 3 boxes. You can see the Clippers winning a championship this year. I'm not sure Brooklyn checks off any of them. They're not that deep. Steve Nash is not exactly known for adjustments. Heck, I'm not sure how many plays he draws up for the Nets to run. And down the stretch, we saw them against Boston. Not great late game execution. You know, I know that Boston wasn't good, and they ran circles around the Nets in the final 5 minutes of those playoff games. Notice, all 4 games in that series were close. It was a 4-game sweep. Celtics won every game. 4-0 sweep. Goodbye Nets from the playoffs. All 4 games came down to the last 5 minutes. And the Celtics aren't even good at executing down the stretch. And the Nets still completely folded. This feels like a 49-50 win team, a 4-5 seed, a playoff series win, and getting bounced in the second round by a Boston or Milwaukee. That's what it feels like. But we'll see what happens. I'm not high on this Nets team. I feel like it's going to be more of the same that we saw a year ago. Let's see. Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcast. Shout out to him. He's in the comments. The Nets are idiots. That is all. Well, you put it a lot quicker than I did. He says the Clippers, what does that say? Brown nosing? Brown nosing is an absolute, you said, are you talking about the Cleveland Browns? I can't really understand what that comment says. He just says it's an absolute comedy special. Barry's a Lakers fan. He doesn't like the Clippers all that much. I'm obviously I don't like the Clippers that much. They're a rival of my team, the Golden State Warriors. I do know that they've been significantly more successful than the Lakers in head-to-head matchups over the last few years, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, Barry says the Clippers praise. The Clippers praise is a comedy special. Well, look, I mean, if you want to talk about in regards to them competing for championships, yeah, they're, in there, how long have they been an organization? 70 years, more or less. Yeah, probably 60 years, probably closer to 60 years. Yeah, they haven't competed for a whole lot of championships. A lot of that's because the disgraced owner Donald Sterling owned them for the majority of that time. I'm just telling you, Barry, and people who dislike the Clippers, like myself, it's a good thing that the Clippers play in the West. It's a good thing that the greatest dynasty since the 90s Bulls are in the way. Because if there's no Golden State, we're probably set for a Clippers-Bucks finals or a Clippers-Celtics finals. So you can thank the Warriors once again for representing the state of California, since nobody in the state of California seems to be able to get their act together. Whether it's just disaster, absolute disaster, that's the Sacramento Kings. Whether it's the just about as bad of a disaster, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Clippers, who have never been to an NBA Finals. So you can thank the Warriors for lifting the state of California, as we always do. All right, moving on back to the NFL, to the most interesting team in the league, without a question, the most talked about team in the league every year, especially at this time, because was it Grady Edwards who's in the comments a lot? Shout out to Grady. Was it Grady who told me this? I think it was that this is the time of year that the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders, or at least this is when the Cowboys are at their best before a game's even been played, because everybody, Cowboys going Super Bowl, this is the year. Like that's kind of been the reality. Actually, not kind of. It has been the reality for the last 26 years. This is when the Cowboys have been at their peak, is July, August during training camp. And so, again, as I said on was it Monday's show? Yeah, it was Monday's show. This team is nowhere near a contender. It will win the NFC East because I think it has the best quarterback in the NFC East and an absolute game changer on the defensive side of the football in Micah Parsons. Okay, that man can single-handedly take over a football game. No question about it. Like a TJ Watt, and to a lesser degree, like an Aaron Donald. That's how great Micah Parsons is. He can do everything. But speaking of the Dallas Cowboys training camp, Stephen Jones, the executive vice president of the Dallas Cowboys, he was talking to Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News. And there's been a lot of reports. Dak's looking good, right? He looks healthy. He looks spry. He's moving around well. Receivers have said he looks good. He's been excellent against the Denver Broncos in the joint practice. He was even better against the Chargers. From what I read, outplayed Justin Herbert, who I said Dak's better than Herbert during those practices. But Stephen Jones was talking about Dak, and he said, quote, "I thought he's had his best camp that I've seen him have since he's been a Cowboys. Velocity, his accuracy, the whole thing. Obviously, as the quarterbacks get older, they get better. The good ones do. They get better every year. There's no question in my mind. I think he's had his best training camp he's ever had." Okay, so, and again, it goes back to, I've said I think this is going to be, at least statistically, and in regards to what the Cowboys are going to need from Dak this season, I predicted this is going to be his most impressive season. This is going to be his best season. You're like, well, how's that going to be the case? Cowboys going to be one and done in the playoffs. Well, how's that any different from every other year? Okay, so like I said, don't expect any playoff success from the Dallas Cowboys. I've said right here, right now, it ain't happening. They're going to win the division. They're going to play second place in the NFC West, whether it's the Rams, Cardinals, or Niners, and they're going to be out again. Like pixie dust. They're going to disappear. They're going to pull a David Copperfield. But I compare it a little bit. I compare Dak Prescott to my favorite athlete in sports, who I'll actually talk about at the end of the show, Steph Curry. Obviously, Steph is on a different stratosphere than Dak Prescott, obviously. But Steph had his quote-unquote best season, just finished it. He broke the three-point record. He won the All-Star Game MVP. He won the Western Conference MVP. He was remarkable in the finals and won a finals MVP. It's like the crowning achievement of his career, right? But the most impressed I've ever been from Steph Curry was the year prior, and Golden State didn't even make the playoffs. When Steph Curry led the NBA in scoring at 32 points a game, did it efficiently too, while getting basically double-teamed every single game. There were some games, I've showed the pictures on the show, you can Google them, where he would get triple-teamed. There was one time that man got quadruple-teamed. The defense, I think it was against the Jazz. The Jazz said, we're going to leave 3 Golden State Warriors wide open. We're going to put 4 guys on one man. Like that's what Steph Curry, he was putting the fear of God in teams that year, right? It's the most impressive ever been from Steph Curry. I saw him grow more as a player that year than I've ever seen him grow. I think I'm going to see similar things from Dak Prescott. First of all, some great news, something that's undeniable. Unlike last season, Dak, knock on wood, nothing bad happens in training camp, will be going into the season ready to go, fully healthy. Shoulder feels good. No calf issues. Now, is there a chance he suffers something during the season? Of course. But as of right now, Dak looks great. He feels great. Best he's felt in probably 3 years. He's obviously in that span improved as a quarterback drastically, as I've shown every single year, getting better and better and better since a down second year. And he's going to have to elevate his receiving unit, right? We're hearing good things. We're seeing good things thus far in training camp from CeeDee Lamb. But as I've always said, even if CeeDee pans out to a guy that's a top 10 receiver, and I'm not ruling out that possibility, he's certainly got the ability to do that. The question is, what about the other guys? What about the James Washingtons? What about the Michael Gallups coming off of an injury? What about guys like Jalen Tolbert, a rookie? What about that one kid, that Semi kid, I think is his name, who's looking good in training camp? Can Dak elevate him? Will Dak continue to elevate Dalton Schultz, right? Does Tony Pollard become a pass catcher in the slot? Looking like he is going to be that, which I'm all in favor of. Get that man the football. If Dak does that, if Dak is able to elevate these receivers, which he's done his whole career, I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. I predicted. Will he be in the MVP discussion? No, because I think it's a 10-7 record for the Cowboys this year, which I think 10-7 will be good enough to win the East, because Washington feels like 7-8 win team, and Philly will be right in the Cowboys' heels all season long until the bitter end. They may even beat Dallas. I don't think that they will, but there's certainly an opportunity that will happen. But never forget, Dak coming off of a shoulder injury, first of all, coming off the ankle injury from the year before, the catastrophic ankle injury, but coming off a shoulder injury in training camp, didn't get a whole lot of reps. Walks into Tampa Bay week 1 against the defending champs. I was there. Against the great Tom Brady, greatest quarterback who ever lived. And Dak matched him throw for throw for throw. Threw for well over 300 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Led a drive in the last 2 minutes that gave Dallas the lead. Dak Prescott, the last time Dak was on the field, Dallas had the lead because he had led them on a drive, capped off by a peg leg Greg Zuerlein field goal to put Dallas in front. But problem was, and I tweeted at the time when I was at the stadium, they gave the greatest quarterback ever too much time. I've seen this movie too many times before, and Tom Brady did what Tom Brady always does, and that's lead a game-winning drive with a field goal. But with not a whole lot of reps in training camp, Dak did that. With not a whole lot of reps in training camp, right? Dak put up the greatest statistical season any Cowboys ever put up. Well over 4,000 yards. A Cowboys record 37 touchdown passes. Getting this team to another division title. His 3rd since he's been there. 12 wins. And the thing I've always said about Dak, the thing that's always, I've kind of always laughed about people that don't like Dak, is when he first came into the league, and he led the Cowboys to a 13-3 record, they were winning the games, but Dak Prescott's stats didn't blow you away, right? His first season, the thing that really stood out about Dak his rookie season was he had a very impressive touchdown to interception ratio, right? It was like 22, 23 touchdowns and only 4 picks. It was excellent. So, but he wasn't putting up huge stats. He wasn't throwing for almost 5,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns, okay? A few years later, we fast forward to 2019. He does put up impressive numbers, but the Cowboys are missing the playoffs. And so people are like, oh, well, okay, he's put up the numbers, but it's not resulting in wins. Well, last year he put the two together. He put up impressive stats, and they won the division, and they won 12 games, and still people aren't satisfied. So that's I'm always say, like, just be consistent. Don't move the goalpost constantly. But am I surprised that Dak is having his best training camp according to Stephen Jones? No, I'm not surprised at all. As I've always said, Dak, his rookie year, had a passer rating of 105. Yeah, 105. His second year, I always said, it was absolutely Dak's worst year. Second year, it dipped all the way to an 86 passer rating. Ever since, it's gone up, up, up every single year. Year 3, his passer rating goes to a 97, right? Year 4, 100. Year 5, right at 100 again. And then year 6, 104. So since that bad year in year 2, better. So, I mean, who's to say Dak's not going to have a passer rating comparable to that of last year, about 104, 105? Like getting into Aaron Rodgers territory now. Completion percentage near 70%, throwing for 4,000 yards, throwing for closer to 40 touchdowns than 30. Winning double-digit games, isn't bringing leadership to the table. Isn't that what you want from a quarterback? He puts up the big numbers. He wins games. He brings leadership especially to a locker room that Lord knows needs it. It's everything you want in a quarterback. So props to Dak. Props to him for, by the way, he says he's in the best shape of his life, right? He's worked with this receiving unit all offseason. I think Dak's due for a big year. I've said, Dak said a few weeks ago on his birthday, it was July 29th and he turned 29 years old. So, as the saying goes, it was his golden birthday. So he's expecting a golden year. And as I said, if Dak's talking about contending for Super Bowls, this ain't it. This ain't going to be the year, Mr. Prescott. But if you're talking about being in that contention possibly for an MVP, I think if he's able to continue to elevate these receivers higher than most people expect, yeah, sure, he's in the MVP discussion. For the record, I said last year with a 10-7 record, I thought Derek Carr would have been my third place for MVP behind Brady and Rodgers because of how he dragged that Raiders franchise after all the stuff they went through. Again, knock on wood that Dallas doesn't have to deal with anything even close to what the Raiders dealt with last season. But Derek Carr elevating those guys, getting them to the playoffs with a 10-7 record, it was remarkable. It was incredible. It was unlike anything I've ever seen from a quarterback this side of Joe Burrow getting the worst offensive line in football of the Super Bowl. Dak is capable of doing what Derek Carr did. Again, I'll bring up my top 10 quarterbacks list. Here you go. I've got Dak at 9th. Right? I think there's a chance that this season or next he could get to about 6, possibly even 5. We know Rodgers doesn't have a whole lot of time left. We know Brady is going to retire after this year. Derek Carr and Dak, it's kind of a back and forth between those two. We'll see. But I think this is going to be a big year for Dak Prescott, his most impressive year to date. And if you're going to ask me to put a number on it, of course, if he stays healthy, we got to have that prerequisite. But if he stays healthy, I think we're talking 4,800 yards, 40 touchdowns, 10 or less interceptions, and a passer rating of 105. Winning double-digit games, winning the division. That's about all you can expect from this Cowboys team, and Dak Prescott's going to have to be great in order to get them there, and I think he will be once again. But, yeah. Stephen Jones saying it. A lot of reporters around the Cowboys have said he looks excellent. That they said he's moving around better than he has in years. Obviously, listen, it takes time to recover from an injury as terrible as that ankle injury was 2 years ago, right? So he's finally like really 100%. He's going to be able to move around the pocket more. So good for Dak, good for the Cowboys without a question, because Lord knows they're going to need it. But moving on to a quarterback who is in Dak's division and has been for the majority of Dak's career, actually is returning to the division that Dak plays in the NFC East. That's Carson Wentz. And we're going to talk about Carson Wentz in the Indianapolis Colts. So Jim Irsay, who is, you could argue, second place to Jerry Jones as far as outspoken owners. Not meddling owners, because that's like Dan Snyder. Like, Dan Snyder's pretty outspoken, but not as much as Jim Irsay. Irsay isn't as much of a meddling owner as a Jerry Jones or as a Dan Snyder of the Washington Commanders. But Jim Irsay was talking, and I do think it was a bad decision on his part to say this months after the 2021 season ended for the Colts. But he said, quote, "We went through the season with some inconsistency at the quarterback that led to massive problems. We're set up for excellence. Now we just have to do it." And Matt Ryan has that same feeling in his heart. So first of all, I don't love him criticizing Carson Wentz after the season has ended and Carson Wentz is on a new team. I don't love that. Even though you all know I've never been a big Carson Wentz guy, I still don't love taking a shot at that guy even after he's out of the organization. But I do agree with what he is saying, that Matt Ryan is going to be an upgrade at the quarterback position over Carson Wentz. Never forget, everybody always talks about the Colts last season, that bad, did I forget to mention bad showing against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that 26-11 loss to Jacksonville. Remember, Wentz was awful. Jacksonville had just come off a game where they lost 50-3, and Jacksonville comes in and just beats out the Colts, where, all the Colts had to do is beat the worst team in the league that year, and they'd have been in the playoffs, and they couldn't even do that, not even close. But something else too. Aside from the Jacksonville game, we'll get to that. The biggest games of the year, the make or break games that the Indianapolis Colts played last season, Carson Wentz did not play well, because a lot of the Carson Wentz defenders will say, hey, hang on a second. He threw for 27 touchdowns. Was it 7 picks? Had the 9th best QBR in the league last season. He had a good year. He was better in 2021 than he was in 2020, obviously. But when you needed him, when you needed Carson Wentz to be great, wasn't there. The only team, because we know Jacksonville's a joke, Houston's a joke. The only team that the Colts had in their way to win the division was the Tennessee Titans. The first game they played the Tennessee Titans, they lost that game 25-16. Carson Wentz barely had a completion percentage over 50, 194 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. So he was essentially non-existent in a big road game at Tennessee. Weeks later, they played the Tennessee Titans again, this time at home. Never forget, in this game, Derrick Henry went down with a broken foot that would hold him out for the entire second half of the season. So no Derrick Henry for the majority of the game. The heartbeat of the Titans offense, gone. And Carson Wentz in this game, in this 34-31 overtime loss, threw for 231 yards, 3 touchdowns, but threw 2 picks, both of them at horrible times. That late game interception, he had the pick 6, and then he had another interception in that same ballpark. Can't make those decisions. It's not that he throws the picks, because he only threw 7 last year. Like Matt Stafford led the league. What did he throw? 15 interceptions? Wentz threw like half that. It's when he threw them that was just at the worst possible times. And then the last 2 games of the season against the Las Vegas Raiders, again, a beat-up Raiders team that had no business in playoff contention at this point. Carson Wentz in this game against a Raiders secondary that was bottom 10 in the NFL. At home, you win, and you're in the playoffs with 1 week left. Carson Wentz threw for 148 yards and only a single touchdown. With the healthier roster, at home, against a terrible secondary of the Raiders, with a chance to make the playoffs, and that's all you give me. But you can make up for it. 1 game left, but it's at Jacksonville. Again, the team that was so bad that despite winning the last game of the year, still had the number 1 pick in the draft. They won 30 games. 3 games did the Jacksonville Jaguars win, and the third and final was against the Colts. And Carson Wentz in this game threw for 185, a touchdown, and a pick. And cost the Colts, was the number 1 reason, because it's a team game, was the number 1 reason the Colts failed to qualify for the playoffs this past winter. That's why the Colts moved on. That's why they went to Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's won an MVP in this league. Matt Ryan's been to a Super Bowl. Right? Played pretty well in the Super Bowl, obviously up until the collapse, up until the 28-3 collapse against the New England Patriots. Matt Ryan's won playoff games. Carson Wentz has thrown 3 passes in a playoff game. You get experience. You get leadership from Matt Ryan that you never got from Carson Wentz, because we heard all the reports out of Philly and some out of Indianapolis that started to trickle out. He's kind of aloof, kind of standoffish with teammates, doesn't really hold himself accountable a whole lot. Matt Ryan's the opposite. Now, Matt Ryan isn't like Drew Brees or Tom Brady leadership, but he's certainly an upgrade over what the Colts had in Carson Wentz in that department. He's more accurate than Wentz. Wentz only completed 62% of his passes last year, and that was considered a good year, when the standard of the NFL is minimum 65%. Okay, Matt Ryan, more accurate. Does he have a better arm? No, but he's a better decision maker, has a better hold of the offense. So you're getting an upgrade at the quarterback position if you're the Indianapolis Colts. And that's why I've said I think the Colts are going to win the AFC South over the Titans, who declined in the offseason. I think the Titans are still possibly a fringe playoff team because of the greatness of Derrick Henry, although I do think they could make a quarterback change to Malik Willis. But that, again, I talked about that last week. But this is a Colts team that I think is no joke. You've got a top 3 defensive player on the defensive side of the football. The secondary is good. Interior defensive line is really good. Skill position players, I really like Michael Pittman. Love what he's shown me over his first 2 years in the league. Jonathan Taylor is the best or second best running back in football. You've got a tremendous offensive line and a great play designer at head coach. As I said last year for Carson Wentz, and I said it, by the way, too, for Matt Stafford, if y'all remember, go back and look at the tape. I said this is put up or shut up time for for Matthew Stafford and for Carson Wentz. Matt Stafford went and won the Super Bowl. Wentz couldn't even get to the playoffs. And so that's why the Rams are trying to go back-to-back, and the Colts made a quarterback change to an older quarterback. Although with Stephen Jones, like I said in the last segment, pointed out, they get better as they go. The truly great ones do. Grady Edwards in the comments. Shout out Grady. Yes, I will go ahead and answer that question, but I'll read it for the podcast audience. Did you hear the rumors Brady is off filming The Masked Singer? Listen, man, Florida Tom is a menace to society. So, Grady, I would not rule it out for a second. Is there a chance that Brady is doing The Masked Singer? Who knows? I think a lot of it has to do with he probably had previously scheduled commitments prior to him unretiring. And so he was, he wanted to make sure he lived up to those commitments with his family, with his wife, with his kids. But then again, listen, is there a chance that we see Brady on The Masked Singer this upcoming season? It's Florida Tom. This is Tampa Tom. This is not New England Tom. This isn't on to Cincinnati Patriots culture. No. Different guy. This is a guy who got about as drunk as I've seen a human being get at a championship parade a year and a half ago. I didn't even recognize that man. Okay, so I'm not ruling anything out. But it is rumors. Who knows? Maybe it's leaked out by Brady's camp. Maybe it's not. But we'll see what happens. But listen, I'd love to see Tom Brady, The Masked Singer. I've never thought of him as a guy who really has pipes, but who knows? Maybe Tom Brady's even more talented at other things that even we thought. Moving on, last topic of the day before we get out of here. I hold I wouldn't call it an unpopular opinion, but I would call it one that is not held by the majority of basketball fans. And that's that Steph Curry is the best player in the world. I back in February the 21st, day after the All-Star game, I said, when Steph Curry wins the 2022 NBA championship, when the Warriors win it more specifically, he's going to win the finals MVP. And in my view, he's going to pass Giannis as the current best player in the world. And most people think it's Giannis. A lot of people think it's still LeBron. There's even a faction that I really don't get that think it's Kevin Durant. Most people don't see Steph in that group as the best player on planet Earth, the best basketball player on planet Earth. But I feel pretty good today because I got some backup, some validation from a Hall of Famer. Not just any Hall of Famer. He's a very large Hall of Famer. You may have heard of him. The man's name is Shaquille O'Neal. And he was on his podcast, the big podcast with Shaq. As a matter of fact, the great Kenny the Jet Smith, Shaq's co-host on Inside the NBA, best sports show on television. He was on there, and they were chopping it up. It's about a 55-minute episode. And but Kenny was talking about contenders in the Western Conference, and this is what Shaq said about Steph Curry.
This could be one of the best Western Conferences we've had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't like the West?
I do, but nobody's going to beat the best player in the world, Steph Curry.
Best player in the world? Steph Curry's the best player in the world?
Yeah, by far.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Best shooter in the world? Best player in the world?
Best player. As Kenny would tell you, you can have a category, but the real ones are recognized by the championships that you have. Nobody plays better than Steph Curry. He's a tough shot taker, tough shot maker. I like where he's brought his career. Let me tell you something. I love Rocky type stories. Kenny was highly recruited coming out of New York. I was highly recruited. Steph wasn't highly recruited. So to be able to work that hard and be the best shooter and one of the best players in the league, he gets my props for that.
My man, Shaquille O'Neal. I appreciate that. I appreciate him giving my favorite player, the best player in the world, Steph Curry, his props. Simply put, being the best player in the world, it's a big title. Very big title. You got to update your resume. As I always say, the NBA, sports in general, got to update your resume. Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? You got to keep showing me you're the best. You got to show me you're the best year after year. That's what made LeBron's run so great for, 15 years, where he was unquestionably the best player in the world, is because year after year, he showed you. He didn't leave any doubts, whether he won the championship or not. He didn't leave any doubts like, okay, that guy's just on a different level than everybody else. Steph's obviously not going to have that kind of run. Again, he's not going to play 15 years. And if he does, he's not going to be the best player in the world for 15 years. But winning the finals in the fashion that Golden State won the finals, in which they needed Steph to be at his absolute peak, he was that. In all playoffs long, he was that. It's not just the greatest shooter in the world. I feel like we get a little lazy with that term. Not just the greatest shooter in the world. But Mike James, he's not one-dimensional. He can do a lot of other things. He has improved drastically on the defensive side of the ball. We know he is, in my view, one of the 2 or 3 greatest ball handlers the game has ever seen. He's an excellent decision maker with the basketball in his hands. He is a point guard. Right? I mean, he is a point guard. He's the all-time assist leader in Warriors history, for crying out loud. He's a point guard. Okay? Excellent finisher at the rim. So everything you want Steph to do, he's an excellent guard rebounder. Everything you want a basketball player to do, Steph Curry does an elite level. And he's the defending champion. All right, so you got to show me year after year. Giannis didn't show me he's the best player to the level that Steph did. That's what Shaq is pointing out. So Shaquille O'Neal feels good. If there's a Hall of Famer I want to back me up on this particular topic, it's Shaq. Big shout out to the Big Diesel. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to catch the Carving Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to like, share, comment, and hit that big red subscribe button. We just celebrated 100 subscribers. It helps the channel grow exponentially. Got some preseason NFL action tonight, actually just in a few minutes, and throughout the weekend, so looking forward to that. Probably going to be talking about some of it on Monday. So until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Big Diesel. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.